Hey everyone, welcome back to Cobb Dev. Today we're getting started on runes, specifically the Magnesis episode. And this one might be a bit of a longer episode just because I really want to get some details in there, make it as much as the actual Magnesis as possible, not just being able to pick up an item and move it around. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to add a few inputs. So let's go to Project Settings. And go down to input. Alright, so let's add the first one, and it's going to be called Activate Rune. And I'm going to make this the R key. So if we just search R, we close gamepad and keyboards right there. Now we also, we need a couple buttons for rune controls. So I'm going to just call this Rune Control Q, and we'll make it the Q key. And Rune Control E, and this will be the E key. Now we might use Q and E for other things later that might not be specific to runes, and in that case we'll just rename them, but for now I'm just leaving them at that. So let's open up our third-person character and put it in there. We just have to create in the event graph the inputs. So input activate rune, input control Q, and input control E. Alright, so we need a new function called activate rune. So in functions we'll call this activate rune, and we want to put this in the category of rune, which already exists because we have it for our variables. And we need a new variable for rune, and we'll call it rune activated. And we'll put it in runes. Compile and save. So when we activate the rune, we want to set this to true. And then we want to offset the camera a little bit. Because as you can see, he's right in the center, so what we're looking at, his head covers, or it's more of his chest really. So we want to offset the camera just a little bit. So let's go to the viewport, and I actually want to offset the default as well. It's a little low. I want his head more centered. If you look at the actual Breath of the Wild game, the camera is a little high. So let's grab this camera boom, and in the socket offset we're going to add maybe 45. Yeah, let's try that. Just hit play, and yeah, that feels a little better to me. So, and basically what we want to do is just when he activates the rune, we just want to move to the side a bit. Alright, kind of lags when I tried to use the slider there. So let's go back to the event graph, and we're going to make a custom event for this, so we can reuse it whenever we want. So we'll add a new custom event, and we will call it camera offset. And we're going to do this with a timer. So we will a timeline, and we'll just call this camera offset TL. And we can open it up, and I'm going to make the length 0.2 seconds. We will add a float track, and we'll call it alpha. And we just have to add two keys, one being at 0, 0 for time and value, and one being at 0.2 and a value of 1. I can press these two icons right here to fit it. And we're going to select both and set this to auto so it's a bit smoother. And then we can close that. So go back here, and instead of play, we're going to play from start. And then in the update, we just have to get the camera boom and set the socket offset. And that's the thing we were just adjusting right now. And we want to lerp it. Linear interpolate is what lerp stands for. And we'll plug the alpha in here. The A value, where it's coming from, is going to be the socket offset of the camera boom. And the B value is going to come from an input of the custom event. So we can just drag it right on there. And we can call it offset. Compile and save. So now we can call this whenever we want, and in the input just put the offset that we want. So let's go back into Activate Rune, And after the rune is activated, we want to call camera offset. And let's say adding a Y value of 45, and the Z value will stay as 45. So we can test it out. Almost. We have to actually call activate rune when we press this right here. So off released, we're just going to make an if statement, ask if the rune is activated. If it's false, we will call activate rune. If it's true, we will call deactivate rune, but that function doesn't exist yet. So let's hit play, and we should see a camera offset when we hit R. There we go. And now the direct center of the screen is not being blocked by our character, and we can aim it at certain things that we want to use the runes for. So let's head back into activate rune and give this a little more functionality than just moving the camera around. So we want to call switch movement modes. And I'm going to change something real quick. If we double click this, it'll bring us to the event graph where this is. Instead of this movement modes ref, I'm going to delete this and plug it in there. So it just saves us an extra step of having to set the enumeration and then call this. So to fix a couple things where this is already called, we need to find the references and double click on all of them. This is the original right here. We can just get rid of these two. So right here will be exhausted. We can copy and paste, and this will be walking. And we can just delete these two and plug them in directly like this. Double click this one. Here, see, we set it to sprinting and then we call it. Instead of doing all that, we can just call sprinting. So we do have to fix this all up, but it's going to help us in the long run. Don't know what that is there for. I'm just going to delete it. Right here, set it to exhausted and replace it. Here, can stay as walking. We replace it. Glide. We have to change it to gliding and replace it. And stop gliding. Keep it as walking. And in activate rune, we're good to go. So we want to set it as walking when we switch to it. We don't want to be gliding or sprinting with the rune. Alright, and after we switch the movement mode, then we actually want to set the, or call the event that will activate Magnesis. In this case, Magnesis. Now you see this is activate rune in general. We wanted to activate whatever rune we have selected when we hit tab and choose our rune. So in the content browser, we're going to go into mechanics, runes, and open up rune properties. We're going to add a new variable, and this is going to be called function name, and this will be of type string. And save and close. Now in the third person character, we can set a timer by function name, and the function name is going to be, oh, we already closed it, the string right there, so we know which rune we have selected. That'll be the function we call. But we're going to come right back to this because in our rune selection widget, I might have opened this off camera, just open your rune selection widget. This is where we define which rune is actually selected, and we don't want that. We don't want that to be controlled by the widget. So we're going to fix this. So let's go into content mechanic runes, and we're going to create a data table. So if you go to miscellaneous and choose data table right here, you have to choose a struct, and we already have a struct. It's rune properties, so hit OK, and we will call this dt runes, or data table runes. So we just have to create a couple rows, 5 to be exact, and we will call them remote bomb sphere, remote bomb cube, and just keep repeating until you have all the runes. Now that we have all 5, we can select them, and we can set their properties here. So name is just going to be remote bomb sphere, image is remote bomb sphere. It's the icon. The type, which is just the enumeration, we choose remote bomb sphere. And the function name, these functions haven't been created yet, so you'll have to remember these, or just go right back to them to make sure they're spelled the exact same. So we haven't created these yet, so you're deciding what the function name is right now for each of these. So I'm just going to RBS activated. So I'm going to go ahead and do these for all of them. Alright, so I'm done. I just created the name, icon, and type, which you should all know, and then for the function name, I just did the name of it and then activated. Except for these two first ones, I abbreviated them. RBC activated, RBS activated. Alright, so we can save that and close. Now let's go into third person character, and we have to create a variable called current Rune. This is previously in the widget. Well, it still is, but we will remove it. And it'll be of type Rune enum. And we can put it in the runes right there. And we can leave the default at sphere. This is great because also when we start, you see that white box up there? It's because we don't have any current selected rune. But once we fix this, it will always have a default rune. So none will never be an option. Alright, cool. So let's go back into our activated rune. And so after this, we want to grab the rune's parameters based off which current rune it is. And we will do this with a function. So we will get rune properties. And we can put that into runes. This will be a very simple function right here. So we just want to get the data table. So we will get data table row. And the data table will be our DT runes. Now, it's important to note, I should have said this before, but it's important to note that these rows from the DT rune, which I already closed, should be spelled the exact same as how they are on the current rune. And as you can see, the first two are not. So let's change this in the enum because data row names can't have parentheses. So let's go to our runes enum, and we just have to make them the exact same as the data table. So remote bomb sphere and remote bomb cube. That's also why we have this name right here, and this is where we'll be pulling the display name when we hit play and choose one right, just like that, instead of the actual name from here. Okay, so let's go back into third person character, and we can get our current rune, and we need to get a enum to string, and then a string to name, and plug that into the row name. And that's how we get the name from our enum to as what it actually says here, rather than like display name 1, display name 2. Alright, so if the row is found, we want to call a return node, and it's just going to break the rune properties, and we're just going to add all of these in. Alright, so back to activate rune, and now we can call get rune properties. And now we can set timer by function name, and this function name will be right there, and the time will be the get world delta seconds, and looping will be checked. So now the only thing left is to fix the widget selection right here, and because this is where it defines what rune is selected, but obviously now we want it here in the player's variable. So let's do that. Right before we leave, we can take this rune struct ref and delete it. We don't actually use it anymore, since we made changes. So let's go into rune selection and just fix this up. So first thing we want to fix is just the easiest one, get rune name text. I don't know why it says 0. This was the variable we just deleted, and it's gone. Because now we want to get the rune properties function we created, and we just want to get the name, plug it in right there. Next, let's get match rune to struct, and we can delete this once again, and get rune properties. Actually, we don't need to get rune properties for this one. We can just get current rune and plug it into the selection. And lastly, let's go back to the event graph, and this is what will have the most changes. We can delete all these variables. I'm going to not do it quite yet because I want to fix them individually before we do that, because they can make a bit more mess. But we need a construct, event construct. And first off, let's match rune to struct. And we want to call a for loop. So regular for loop. First index will be 0. The last index will be the rune selection grid panel. And we want to get the children count and plug it in for the last index. In the loop body, we want to cast to checkbox. And then we want to get the child. Oh, here we need to get it from this. Get child at. Let's move this down. And the index will be the index, and that'll be the object for cast to checkbox. And if the checkbox is equal to, almost couldn't find my equal button, the selected rune, then we want to set, or let's bring it off here, set is checked to true. And let's copy and paste that and set it to false on false. So that'll just set up our default one, so we don't get that white screen. Now we get some errors here because we haven't changed this part yet. And I am totally just realizing that we could have just copied and pasted all this. It's the exact same, but I forgot. But at least that refreshed your memory on how it works. Okay, so now this is a pretty simple fix. We just can delete these, and let's just go ahead and, I know what I said earlier about doing it individually, but I don't care anymore. Let's just delete them all. I'm a change man. Alright, okay, so as third person character, now we just want to set the current rune, so it sets it directly in our third person character, to the correct one. So I'm just going to delete all these, and I'm going to copy and paste this, and now we can just plug that in, plug the target in, and make sure you're selecting the correct one based off the checkbox. Okay, and hit compile and save. Error should go away. And I think we are good. This function won't actually start anything because all these function names, none of the functions exist yet. But if we go in, almost nothing should look like it's changed. We've just cleaned up a ton. There's supposed to be a default. So let me figure out what's causing this real quick. Oh, of course. So we changed the first widget where you actually select the runes, but we forgot to change the weapon select. So if you go into UI and open up weapon select, this is the one we forgot to fix. So let's go into graph, and in get rune image brush, we can delete that and just do what we've been doing and get rune properties. And for this one, we just need the icon, and this will go into rune brush image, and that should fix our issue. So let's try it one more time. Hit play, and you see we now have our remote bomb sphere there, and whatever we select, it should change. So for the most part, other than the weapon select up there, things should look exactly the same, but things are a lot cleaner, a lot more efficient now. A lot more the way it should have been. So, ooh, nice. Okay, so now we are all set up for runes. I originally was gonna do the magnesis in the same episode, but this is getting on a little long. But I have prepared everything for the magnesis episode, so I might try to get that out tomorrow, or maybe even today. We'll see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I did start a Discord server recently, so check the link in the description for that. I get to talk to you guys. You guys can ask questions. You can talk to other people about dev help and such. It's really nice. And try to make sure to follow my Twitter too at CobbDev1. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.